Hello, everyone, and welcome to Legacy Premier League. This is going to be our fourth and final round of open play. And we've seen some really interesting matches so far. We've seen a lot of people move on to the winners bracket. Some move on to the losers bracket. So that's a little tough for sure. But we have some interesting matchups here. I think this is probably the most stacked pod, Tannen. What do you think about that?
From a individual player's perspective of accomplishments, yeah, definitely. I mean, you have a world champion in here. You have a known legacy god. A couple other players that are also just very good. I mean, you could list the accomplishments of each player in this pod, and no one in here is one of the players that you'd be super excited as seeing as like your first round opponent of this pod.
No, I looked at the list for people who were playing when I got added, and I was like, wow, these are a lot of really good people. And then I got put into my pod, and I had Andrea Mengucci and Noah Walker, and I was like, oh my god, I'm dead. And I just can't imagine like what's going through some of these competitors' minds when you look up and you're like, oh, cool, I have to play Brian-Braun Duin round one. Cool.
World champion.
Be interesting. Yeah, no big deal. Legacy superstar. Won a Grand Prix with a deck with Swords to Plowshares and Young Pyromancer in his deck. You know, it's a little interesting. It just goes to show the power of Treasure Cruise. But this is going to be really interesting. It looks like for our first match, we're going to have Brian-Braun Duin, world champion, legacy superstar, 33rd at the most recent Pro Tour.
33rd. That's a good finish.
That's a pretty good finish. Tannen, what was your finish?
I believe that was 31st, Rudy.
31st. Would you say 31 is higher or lower than 33?
Well, it's higher in the standings, but it's a lower number.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah, there's just no way to tell who did better in that.
Yeah,
but,
right? There's no way.
Close, very close, though. But we're going to have BBD playing Grixis Control, a deck that he's pretty familiar with, played with at the Pro Tour. He's going to be playing against Bob Huang. Bob Huang is playing a deck that's kind of near and dear to me a little bit in 4-color Loam. If you watched the first round, I also played 4-color Loam. And our deck lists are actually like very close, very similar. The big difference is Bob has a main deck Ramanap Excavator. I had Trialer's Tracker, and he also has a main deck Tabernacle, which means to me that Bob was really looking to play against a bunch of fair decks. And looking over the list of everything that we saw, there's a lot of fair decks.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the lineup of players that are just in this event overall, most of them are just fair deck players. You know, when you think of BBD, you don't think he's going to be like storming off on turn one too often. You know, he likes to grind. Bob plays traditionally like decently fair decks. A lot of other people, let's not talk about Brian Cook. He's out in left field always doing his storm thing. He's always storming people. But I really expected to see a very fair match of Magic between almost everybody in this format, which is the kind of Magic that I enjoy as well, even in Legacy, like when you should be doing as broke as stuff as you can possibly do. So I'm pretty excited to watch this match. Now, I know you said you've played both of these decks before. I'm only like pretty familiar with the Grixis deck. I tested it a lot for the Pro Tour. I knew what my matchup was against it and with it. So that I haven't really had too much experience of 4-color Loam myself. As we see Bob take a mulligan here, it looks like BBD's also going to follow him into the mulligan here. How do you feel this matchup goes? Like, do you feel that you're advantaged as a 4-color Loam deck, or is it like more subtle than that?
So this is kind of interesting. Normally against fair decks, now when you think about 4-color Loam, and part of the reason that I picked this deck is because it lines up so well against other fair decks. So it's kind of this fair deck killer in a sense. And so I really like 4-color Loam. Part of the reason that it's so good is Chalice of the Void is just such a good card, and Liliana is good card. It's great against all these fair decks. Here's the problem. Grixis Control is playing cards like Baleful Strix, which, aren't very good to Punishing Fire or Liliana. It's playing cards like Kolaghan's Command, which line up really well against Liliana and Chalice of the Void. And it's playing Jace the Mind Sculptor. So if you look at it on paper, I think Grixis Control might be a little favored in the matchup. Now, if you're Bob, I think you're going to be looking for something along the lines of like a Loam, Ghost Quarter, Wasteland. Obviously the Grixis Control deck is a little susceptible to Wasteland. So it's definitely going to be something that you're looking for. Wasteland plus Ghost Quarter is going to be pretty good at kind of curbing their mana. And if you're on the Grixis Control side, you're really going to be looking to land an early Jace to kind of, take over the game.
Right. I think that card is the most important one in the matchup for me is Jace, because I think BBD is going to at times struggle to find a way to win the game. Like you said, Baleful Strix just doesn't line up very good against the card Punishing Fire, and Snapcaster is not going to do a ton when like you have Punishing Fires and Liliana's going on. So I think it's going to be that BBD is going to have to try to find a way to win the game as quickly as possible. And you see that his hand's actually pretty good at doing this. He has a Ponder and a Brainstorm here. That's going to go a long way in finding him a lot of cards and trying to find, some copies of Jace the Mind Sculptor in this game as quickly as possible.
For sure here. And we see a lot of fetching here, and I think a lot of players might be really confused. But Tannen, I think you're going to be pretty familiar with this, and you're going to know why. Why are these players kind of fetching around each other instead of just kind of fetching on their own turn or at a separate time? What are they looking to play around here?
Well, there's this card in the format called Stifle that they're kind of trying to play around, and it has made a comeback in Legacy. We hadn't really seen it over the last 2 to 3 years, but with the banning of Deathrite Shaman and Gitaxian Probe, that card has actually kind of made its way back into the format. You get to kind of punish people's early development of mana. It's like a 1-mana blue card that, for all intents and purposes, LDs your opponent. It just destroys a land. So you can see people being a little more careful. If big thing in the Pro Tour this weekend, we had a lot of main phase fetches and stuff like that going on. And then, you just kind of play. There's no reason not to play around it.
For sure, and I think at this point both players are kind of familiar. They both have figured out that no one has Stifle,
right.
But for the first few turns, deck lists are not public to each other for the first round, so that's what they're kind of playing around here. But we see Bob kind of start this Life of the Loam. He's starting this engine here, and part of the reason that this deck is so good is because it makes great use out of Liliana and Life of the Loam because it lets you redraw cards with Tranquil Thicket. And then it lets you discard spare lands to Liliana, so you're always going to get to keep a mass amount of spells in your hand.
This is a really good draw for Bob as well this turn if he wants to go for it. He picked up a Chalice here. Now, Chalice on 1 isn't like a death nail in the coffin to Grixis control. It is to say like Grixis Delver. 90% of that deck was a 1-drop. It's still a very, very impactful card in this matchup, though. Cards like Ponder and Brainstorm are no longer able to cast out of BBD's hand here. And you're seeing that's a pretty big problem because BBD's kind of flooding out on mana a little bit here. And he really, really needed to get these Ponders and Brainstorms. I don't blame him for kind of holding on to them. As we said, there's very specific cards that are very good in this matchup that he was looking for. The problem is he doesn't have any of them yet. If his hand already had something like Kolaghan's Command, this wouldn't be that big of a deal. Now he's got to draw it the old-fashioned way. He just has to top deck it.
Yeah, for sure. And we see here that Bob is kind of taking it slow. He didn't dredge his Life of the Loam at first. That was because he kind of wanted to draw a spell. He didn't know if Liliana plus Punishing Fire was going to be enough. But now with Chalice of the Void down, BBD just passing, he has to assume that maybe there's a Kolaghan's Command coming up. But at this point, it's kind of just he's wanting to draw, maybe try and find a Grove of the Burn Willows, which he did. That's going to be great. Recurring Punishing Fire is one of the ways this deck is able to actually interact with Jace the Mind Sculptor here. So we'll see here that I think we're going to see Bob really start to take over this game here. And we're really seeing that BBD's hand not really lining up very well right here, and he's in desperate need of something good here. I'm gonna hope if you're on BBD's side, gotta hope you draw Kolaghan's Command, gotta hope you draw Jace the Mind Sculptor here.
Yeah, it's pretty much one of those two cards, and I kind of like the line that Bob is taking here. Like you said, he kind of started out a little slow. Now he's going to turn up the heat as we see BBD get a Snapcaster and gets a little pressure on this Liliana. But the most important thing, like you said, is those two cards, BBD needs to draw them. So what Bob needs to do here, and you're seeing that he's starting implementing the plan, is he's attacking on multiple fronts. He's attacking BBD's hand with Liliana the Veil, because as you know, the way the game's played out, Bob knows that there's no Kolaghan's Command in BBD's hand. Otherwise, he would have cast it last turn. So I think one of the other things that he wants to do here is try to find something like Wasteland as fast as possible and just start to really hammer BBD's mana development. Try to keep him off of Kolaghan's Command, keep him off of Jace the Mind Sculptor as long as he possibly can, because those are the only cards that matter at this point.
Yeah, and we're going to see here, Liliana is just going to keep upticking, going to keep shredding BBD's hand. And if, Bob plays a spell here that BBD has to Force of Will, he's going to be even farther behind. This Liliana is going to start really ripping up, and we have Grove of the Burn Willow's Punishing Fire going. This game is not looking great for BBD, but we got to try and figure out. I think BBD has the tools that he needs to be able to get out of this in his deck. It's just whether or not he can draw them before Bob is really able to close out the game. I mean, as you're probably pretty familiar with, Punishing Fire is really slow.
Yeah, it's slow. You have to give your opponent a life. I mean, you can kill them with the card. It's one at a time, but It's mostly there to kind of control early game creatures and stuff like that. Like you said, BBD definitely is in a bad spot. He's going to have to top deck pretty much exactly Kolaghan's Commander Jace to get out of this. And the bad part is that he's getting squeezed on multiple fronts here. Like Liliana's attacking his hand, so he has to keep stuff in his hand to protect the cards that are important. Like he's trying to protect this Force of Will as long as possible, as much as he can. So that means he can't play other cards out of his hand, which means he can't always play all of his lands. And if Bob were to find something like Ghost Quarter or specifically Wasteland being even worse, BBD's going to get squeezed on that front as well. So like you said, BBD's in a rough spot here from the get-go. He kind of flooded out a little too much, didn't get to use a Brainstorm for value early, so he's in a pretty bad spot. He can't even pressure this Liliana anymore after that Punishing Fire.
No, and we're going to see Brian draw 5th land, go ahead, play his 5th land here so he can be able to discard this Brainstorm or Scalding Tarn over the next couple of turns and still hold up Force of Will. But, I mean, again, this is a spot where, surprisingly enough, besides BBD being down really far, he isn't dead quite yet. I mean, Bob still needs to find a way to win the game. Liliana, fantastic Magic the Gathering card, really good at shredding fair decks, not very good at winning the game.
Yeah, and we see Bob did actually find a Wasteland here. There's one in his graveyard now. Now, let's say that he hadn't found a Wasteland, and he just had to keep ticking up Liliana for the next couple turns. BBD's actually, that's not the end of the world. He could have actually gotten to the point where Bob actually ultimated Liliana, took away like half of BBD's permanents, which would just be lands at this point, and BBD would continue to play because there's nothing killing him yet. Bob hasn't found something like a Knight of the Reliquary or anything to put into play yet. But I gotta say this Wasteland's probably gonna speed this game up just a little bit.
Yeah, we're gonna see here. BBD's fetching. He's reaching for this Force of Will. He needs to protect himself for at least this turn. He can't really, he has to stop Bob gaining some advantage here. And one of the interesting parts is obviously Bob has a Tranquil Thicket in his graveyard. So he's going to be able to do this cycle every turn where he's going to be able to draw a card with Tranquil Thicket, dredge his Loam back to Tranquil Thicket, draw an extra card, and keep doing this cycle to try and, spike a threat somewhere down the line.
Mm-hmm. And you see BBD playing his lands out here because, like we were talking about, this Wasteland and Liliana are going to keep pressuring his hand, keep pressuring his lands. He wants to make sure that he can cast the card Kolaghan's Command if he draws it anytime soon. The problem is, even if he draws that card now and does something like kill Chalice of the Void and do some damage to Liliana, it's still not good enough. He's still going to be in a really rough spot. Like, how does he win the game from here? So BBD is going to fight it out, see as many cards as he can. But like we said, he is in a really rough spot right now.
Yeah, we're going to see here. I think there's a second Wasteland here. Mm-hmm. And a second Wasteland is, as you said, it's certainly going to speed up the clock here. And Liliana plus Tranquil Thicket is going to be great for him to be able to shred BBD's hand, continually draw cards, and really kind of make an impact here in this game. And if you're BBD, at what point are you going to look to concede? Are you going to wait until your opponent presents a threat, or are you at the point where when you're locked out, you're just locked out and you're done?
Yeah, it's going to be pretty soon, I think. If I were Bob, I think I would be going for the red sources as soon as possible, try to cut him off of being able to cast the card Kolaghan's Command. And then once he gets down below 4 lands and doesn't make another land drop, gets down below 3 lands, like if he ever gets down to just 2, I think that's a good spot to pick it up. Or if Bob presents a threat that BBD cannot deal with. So as you see now, he's got 6 lands in play, no hand after this Liliana activation. So I expect a concession pretty soon if all things stay the same on the next top deck or two. And like I said, Bob smartly goes after the red source here. BBD picks up another land here, but this was a pretty rough game to watch from BBD's perspective because he just never had anything going. And you need to have like something, early to kind of pressure Bob. If you let Bob's deck just do whatever it wants, it's going to run you over.
Yeah, absolutely here. And we saw BBD had just a couple of cantrips in his hand, never really got to make use out of them because of Chalice of the Void, and that really closed off everything that can happen here. But yeah, I mean, as you said, we're getting to the point where this Wasteland is just going to go ahead and take it out. And what's really interesting here is Bob actually has a main deck Ghost Quarter, and this main deck Ghost Quarter means that even if BBD decides to go for his basics, Bob's going to have those covered too. And it looks like he's just going to try and eat away all of his lands here. And obviously Bob doesn't have access to the same information that we have, but let's take a look at BBD's deck right quick, and let's see how many lands he has, really to work with. And it looks like he has 1 island, 2 badlands, that's 3, 4 underground sea, that's 7, 2 volcanic islands, that's 9, and a swamp is 10. That's only 10 lands, and we've been through how many so far? We've been through 2 badlands. Yeah, this is not an ideal situation here, and a Diabolic Edict off the top, and BBD's had enough. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to sideboarding here. But before we talk about sideboarding for a minute, we are going to talk about the structure of this tournament. So there are 4 group stages here, and the way the tournament works is there are 2 matches. First person that wins will move on. The second person that wins will then play that first winner of the first game. So what's going to happen here is whoever wins here, let's say Bob wins, Bob is going to play the winner of match number 2. If BBD loses, he's going to go ahead and play the loser of match number 2. If the person who wins the third match, right over here, we're going to show the winners finals right here. So the 2 winners will move on to the winners bracket. They will play. Whoever wins, they're going to win the group. They're going to win the stage. They're going to go ahead and move on. The losers are going to play. Whoever loses, they're out. They're in our losers bracket. Whoever loses in the winners final will play. We'll move on down to the losers bracket and play whoever won there. Whoever wins there, we'll move on to our winners bracket, and whoever loses will pass on down.
Sounds good. Now, in sideboarding, BBD does get to kind of bring in some pretty important cards in this matchup. I don't know Bob's side of the matchup too much, but I do know that BBD is going to make his deck a little more grindy. You're going to see him bring in stuff like Liliana, the Last Hope, some planeswalkers out of his sideboard, get a little more grindy. But the card that he's really looking to draw is Surgical Extraction. This is going to be very, very big in this matchup. Be able to take out Life from the Loam in a pinch. It could even hit Wasteland out of the graveyard of Bob's here. So anything he can do to kind of like insulate himself from exactly what happened to him in game 1. He can't let that happen again, or he just is not going to have a chance to win this match.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to see cards like, Hymn to Torok possibly, move out to the sideboard. It's a little weak in this matchup. The deck is a Life in the Loam deck, although the threats are so good that sometimes you want a couple of Hymn to Toroks. An early Hymn to Torok can kind of rip the deck apart. One of the interesting things about 4-color Loam, and this is just a really weird thing, is even though the deck has so many lands and so many mana sources, sometimes just a Hymn to Torok can cut you off of a color completely, and that is obviously a dangerous position to be in. So I'm not really too surprised to see BBD keeping a couple Hymn to Toroks here. On the 4-color Loam side, we're going to see a couple lands come out, some of the weaker lands. Tabernacle, Caracas don't really make an impact here, but Maze of Ith will, especially against cards like Gurmag Angler, which is really one of the big ways the Grixis deck wins. We're going to see some Planeswalkers too, a Johnny Vengeance, Garruk Relentless. These are cards that are hard for BBD to interact with. Now, if you go ahead and you look at BBD sideboarding, you see he's boarded out Lightning Bolt. Mm-hmm. And part of that reason is because it doesn't really kill Knight of the Reliquary.
If you could Lightning Bolt on Knight of the Reliquary, you should do it right away because you're pretty lucky and you're not going to have another shot at ever killing it. It's not great. It doesn't line up well against Liliana of the Veil, so it's very understandable that he takes it out. Also doesn't line up well against Chalice of the Void, for one. So here you get to see kind of like someone taking advantage of the way that like his opponent's going to be sideboarding in the matchup. And that's one of the most important things in Magic is like not just understanding what's good for your deck to change into, but what's good versus how your opponent's changing their deck. And that's very important, and Bob understands that. So he's bringing in a couple of extra cards to help just punish what BBD's trying to do here.
Yeah, for sure here. And we're going to see Brian, unfortunately, plagued with another mulligan here. And we're going to see Bob kind of keep an interesting hand here. And this is one of those tougher hands I think about 4-color Loam is when you have Mox Diamond in one land, do you keep? But part of the reason that this deck is good is because you have the ability to Mox Diamond or Green Sun Zenith for Dryad Arbor to kind of power out something. We are going to see Green Sun Zenith for Dryad Arbor here, at least giving Bob access to a Dark Confidant, regardless of what happened. Regardless if he misses a land, as long as Dryad Arbor doesn't die. And land off the top is great here.
Yeah, would you have kept this hand in game 1, like before sideboarding, if you were Bob?
I would not. I think again, this is one of those hands that's really, really close, and I think Bob has kind of recognized that the Grixis deck is very slow, it's a little clunky, and he has a ton of time. So,
right, and BBD is not going to have Fatal Push and Lightning Bolt in his deck still, so he's not going to have ways to really punish you for going to have to get Dryad Arbor. Plus, you don't know that he doesn't have another land as well, because this is a play line that 4-color Loam's going to make anyway most of the time.
Right. And I think we're going to see here, this Mox Diamond hitting the bin is going to be fantastic. And a Dark Confidant here is really interesting. It's obviously great here, but if BBD can spike a land, this Liliana, that Liliana would have taken over the game, utterly and completely here. So it's a little unfortunate for, I know Brian was certainly hoping to hit that land, spike that land off the draw here, but Brainstorm is going to get Kolaghan's Command, Jace the Mind Sculptor, and a Swamp. You got to be pretty happy to see those cards.
Absolutely. I mean, we talked about in game 1 what's important in this matchup, right? And BBD's found all of it. He's got a Planeswalker. He's got Kolaghan's Command. He's got a second Planeswalker. He's got a Force of Will here. He can kind of protect himself just a little bit. Force not amazing in this matchup, but it does give you that buffer of, like, you can make sure nothing really bad happens for one turn. So you get that setup. And that's what's important in this matchup, because we saw that, Bob got a little set up in game 1 and ran away with it. And BBD's going to trying to keep that away from happening, trying to keep that from happening again here in game 2. And that's going to provide that buffer that he needs.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to see BBD actually shuffled off that Ponder, ripped into another Ponder here. But Wasteland revealed from Dark Confidant here is going to set Bob back even further than he already. Bob has to hope he spikes the land here. He does. Liliana, the last hope, is going to come back, is going to go back to this Dark Confidant. And with Force of Will on the backup, we're going to be possibly in a good spot.
Yeah, if BBD had to do something like Ponder for a land that turn and didn't get to make any kind of progression on the battlefield, I think you're going to see this game kind of fall away from BBD yet again. You're going to see kind of the same thing that happened in game 1. Not exactly the same, but very similar. The game was just going to get kind of run away with. So very, very good for him to actually get a land that turn.
1 second, I might a little bit.
Yeah, you see Bob does have a clean answer for Liliana the Veil here, though. He's got an Abrupt Decay to kind of take care of it here. Very important in this matchup. He can't let BBD get too far ahead in value. Planeswalkers, like we said, super, super important here. And if BBD doesn't draw a land here, he doesn't draw a land here, so he can't play the Jace the Mind Sculptor. But he's still got, like, okay Kolaghan's commands. If he wants here, he can Kolaghan's Command, Mox Diamond plus Dryad Arbor, set Bob back just down to 2 lands. And I think that's what you're going to be seeing here this turn. You want to make sure that Bob doesn't have just, the easiest turns in casting Knight of the Reliquary, anything like that.
Yeah, sure. This would be a really interesting set of turns. Several turns. I'm back down to robot. Skyscraper program. Have you heard? Yeah, for me.
Here we see Bob's going to be casting a Chalice for 1. Very important this matchup. Like I said earlier, takes care of a lot of the cantrips. It's going to go ahead and prompt a Force of Will out of BBD here. BBD's still trying to find that 4th land to land this Jace the Mind Sculptor, try to take the game over from here. Doesn't find it, but he's still got a pretty deep will, plus Jace the Mind Sculptor can be pitched in a pinch if he really, really needs to get that taken care of. He's got a Diabolic Edict here, just like lined up, ready to take care of this Knight of the Reliquary. Liliana the Veil is a pretty big draw here from Bob Huang. This is going to prompt that Force of Will out of BBD's hand, and it means that he has to pitch this Jace the Mind Sculptor to this Force of Will. This is a big win for Bob. Jace the Mind Sculptor, one of the most important cards in the matchup. This is something you don't want to have to be doing. So you see BBD thinking right now, can I actually Force of Will here, pitching this Jace the Mind Sculptor? Is this something that I can do and still actually win this game? Because one of the Lilianas of the Veil is already in his graveyard. He's in a rough spot right now, and he's trying to figure out, how do I win the game from here? Not just that, I need to stop this Liliana of the Veil. So this is a tough spot for BBD. I got to lean towards forcing pitch Jace here and just hope my deck gives me what I need to win from here. But this is a real cost on this Force of Will.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm back now. Am I back?
Yep.
Sweet. Perfect. So, yes, Liliana's obviously devastating here, and I absolutely agree here. That's one of those weird situations where if you draw exactly a land, your Jason Mind Sculptor is going to be fantastic, and if you brick, the game is just over.
It's got to be frustrating from BBD's side. He's had multiple turns where not a lot is going on. He can't top deck a land, and Bob just keeps top decking heat here. Liliana the Veil off the top. Yet another thing that BBD's deck just is not going to be set up well to deal with anymore. And I got to say, we might see a replay of game 1 here, Rudy. This is actually not a terrible draw from BBD here. He can Snapcaster Mage into a Brainstorm in response to, I guess you don't want to do that in response to Liliana the Veil if you don't mind losing one card, I guess. There's a couple different ways he can do this. He can Ponder in his own main phase. He can do it in response to, but that lets Bob actually, do something like -2 of the Liliana if he wants, so it gives Bob more options. So maybe you're supposed to wait here and Brainstorm in response, get rid of the card you don't want. It's like a mini shuffle almost.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible too. The other option is he could cast Snapcaster Mage in response to this card, target Brainstorm, let Bob discard, and then Brainstorm so he knows exactly what he's looking for. We could also Snap Ponder here, look for a land. It depends on really what BBD is looking for and what he thinks his out are, and it looks like he thinks his out might be using the Snapcaster Mage to pressure Liliana here, and Wasteland off the top is gross.
Yeah, that's a really good draw here. Again, attacking the mana. This is going to be BBD's only source of red that's in play. It's an interesting thing you're talking about. You could wait to cast the Brainstorm. I'd almost be inclined to cast it in response to the trigger just to get rid of a card off the top 3, because if you don't find a shuffle mech, you're quote-unquote Brainstorm locked. So it's an interesting line. You can try to figure out, do I want to cast this before the discard? Do I want to cast it after the discard? So it does allow you to get deeper into your deck technically, I guess, by allowing yourself to discard a card that you don't want. So I don't know, it's a pretty weird spot, but I do not envy where BBD is.
Yeah, we're going to see here Punishing Fire is just going to go ahead and take the Snapcaster out. Liliana is going to roll on up to 5, and this is just being so brutally beaten for BBD here. And Brainstorm, Snapcaster Mage, Scalding Tarn, all really good cards. All cards that he certainly would want in this matchup. The question is, are they going to be relevant in time? And that's the uncertainty here.
Yeah, well, you pretty much have to take Brainstorm, Scalding Tarn here. I was going to say, with the third mana, you could do the Snapcaster Mage Ponder thing, but I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to actually get ahead in cards here and still attack Liliana of the Veil, because there is a Grove on the other side. But the thing is, Bob only has one source of red right now, so he can't Grove plus use Punishing Fire in the same turn. So this Snapcaster Mage will actually stay on the battlefield unless Bob wants to use Liliana of the Veil to kill it.
Yeah, we're going to see here Snapcaster Mage is going to go ahead and put this Ponder to help BBD try and run back into this game. And he is at a point where Bob doesn't have a second red source, so Punishing Fire is a 2-turn a 2-turn investment here. It's activate, gain a life, bring back Punishing Fire, untap, cast Punishing Fire. In the meantime, there are answers to Liliana here, and this is a really good Ponder, I think, actually. Force Will, Angler means that BBD can draw this Force Will here, discard it to Liliana, untap Angler. It looks like he shuffled, actually, and ripped the Force Will again anyway.
Are we sure that he shuffled there? Because I kind of like your play line of draw the Force of Will, and then you could play multiple Anglers.
Yeah, looks like he did shuffle his library. It looks like BBD does not want to take that line.
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe he thinks it's just not going to be good enough to win from here. I gotta say, Punishing Fire plus Liliana the Veil does actually take care of that pretty well. Like you play Gurmag, and Liliana goes down twice to 1 loyalty, and that doesn't actually get you anywhere. So I don't really blame BBD for doing that. In fact, it actually just seems better just to try to find something else in your deck to handle Liliana from here. You see, Bob is actually going to keep upticking here, just taking away all resources that BBD can have. Doesn't really care about the Snapcaster Mages in play right now since this Punishing Fire is in his graveyard, and it's looking dire for BBD from here.
Yeah, absolutely here. Bob knows that he has Snapcaster Mage covered over the next couple of turns here. So Bob is, at this point, realistically just hoping to dodge a Jace the Mind Sculptor off the top. I think that's really what he's looking to dodge on.
Yeah, a lot of the Grixis decks play a second copy of Jace the Mind Sculptor in their main deck. So, you've already gotten through one of those. You've already gotten through one Liliana of the Last Hope. Neither the Reliquary, pretty good top deck here. That's actually going to probably end this game a lot quicker than the pace it was at. And
certainly. This has to be massive at this point as well.
I think it's going to be like a 8-8. Yeah. I was trying to keep track of all the lands that have been in the graveyard. They've been going very quickly, though. So...
Yeah, and this is a really interesting part. So Bob actually has a couple different paths to take. He could Punishing Fire Snapcaster Mage, try to attack for 8. He could start using Knight of the Reliquary to go ahead and get Wastelands and start trying to Wasteland BBD off of what he has here. And with this attack here, you have to assume that BBD drew Fatal Push. You just have to assume.
This is one of those spots where, I got to believe, Bob kind of knows what's going on a little bit here. Maybe he thought maybe there's not Fatal Push in BBD's deck anymore. Maybe just didn't think about the fact that, it does trigger Revolt. Or maybe Bob just doesn't care. That's also a very big possibility. He just doesn't care at all about losing this Knight of the Reliquary because he's in such a demanding position that he doesn't think BBD can even win from here. Another Wasteland here off the top is going to cut back BBD on mana even more here, meaning that he needs to find another 4th land and the Jace the Mind Sculptor, get himself back in this game. And if Bob ever finds life from the Loam, again, this game's going to be in the same spot that it was game 1, where BBD's just unable to win.
Yeah, and part of the reason that it's possible that Bob blocked there, maybe he thought that BBD drew Bolt and wanted to insulate his Liliana from Lightning Bolt here. But at the same time, I kind of would almost rather play around Push than Bolt and then just start attacking for 8. But again, BBD's certainly the master. He definitely knows what he's doing, and I'm not really surprised really anything that he does. Very, great, powerful magician.
This is a rough spot here too. He's got a Snapcaster Mage with a can. Is there a cantrip left in his graveyard? No, there's not actually a cantrip left, and he doesn't even have a second source of blue either. So when Liliana upticks, you're going to see the ambush viper mode, as everybody likes to call it. With actually, there's a decent target for it. So if Bob were to let Dark Confidant get into play this turn, he might be able to get a Fatal Push on it. But again, this Liliana upticking is going to take away that opportunity.
Yeah, I think we're pretty likely to see this Punishing Fire hit the bin, a pass from Bob. There's no reason to expose Dark Confidant to a Fatal Push, especially when we can rebuy the next turn. It's just fine to sit here and play it safe. BBD's so far behind that Bob is trying to just essentially be this weird pseudo-control deck.
Mm-hmm. I think in this matchup, Bob does actually kind of assume the control role, even though they're both kind of control decks, and BBD's deck is literally called Grixis Control. Because I think all the onus is on BBD to win the game. Bob never has to actually do anything, because him just actually playing his spells and doing what his deck does normally just crushes BBD's deck so well that it puts all the pressure on BBD to find something to do. So BBD actually has to become the aggro deck in the matchup. And as you're seeing, his deck is not always super well suited to do that. He's got 1/1s for 2 mana and stuff, and Gurmags that he can't even cast early in the game and stuff. And Bob's deck is just churning on all cylinders, while BBD kind of has been flooding out and not having things work out for him.
Yeah, for sure. This is definitely a matchup where the answers that you draw are very relevant, and we saw that Bob has been pretty adept at drawing the answers that he needs at any point in time, and BBD is struggling just a tiny bit. Just an eensy bit on trying to put everything together here. And this is another spot where all of BBD's cards look great on his Ponder, and I think he has to shuffle.
Yeah, he has to shuffle this. Gurmag Angler just doesn't get it done. It's like we talked about earlier. You Punishing Fire the Snapcaster Mage, and then you just -2 the Liliana. How many times has BBD had to shuffle off Ponder in this matchup? It's upwards of like 4 or 5 times. That's never good. That's never a good sign. You're probably not winning your matches when you're shuffling off your Ponders this often.
Yeah, and we see here Punishing Fire during the end step. BBD has no cards in hand. We're pretty likely to see this Dark Confidant hit the bin, and Liliana's going to force this Punishing Fire to be discarded again.
Mm-hmm. Even Tranquil Thicket get picked up here. Do you just cycle and try to find life from the Loam? Just because as soon as you cast it, I think the game is just over, right?
Yeah, as soon as we find life from the Loam, things are awesome here. This is kind of interesting here. It looks It looks like he's going to Punishing Fire the Snapcaster first, but
he's just going to Punishing Fire,
is
Dark
just going to
Confidant,
play the Tranquil Thicket?
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting here. I think I'd rather cycle the Tranquil Thicket first. We have plenty of time on the Snapcaster Mage. It's possible that he's just playing around another top deck Fatal Push or something, but not thrilled with that at all.
No, I actually kind of like that line. This actually uses Bob's whole hand, and getting the extra land in play is not something that's irrelevant. This allows him to start using Life from the Loam plus Punishing Fire in the same turn. So this is something that he actually needs to start doing, is advancing his mana as much as possible. He just found a second red source, which is really, really big in this match. A second Grove as well. So he can kind of play around if there were something like Wasteland in BBD's list, which I think we know that he doesn't have. It insulates him, and Punishing Fire is just going to continue to go to work here.
Yeah, the second Grove here is fantastic here. Another Dark Confidant, Liliana on 6. This game is, moving closer and closer to, that full Vice grip, and before BBD's unable to do anything and the game is over.
Rudy, I don't think it's moving closer. I think it was there quite a while ago. Once BBD missed on that land, it feels like 30 minutes ago, but it was earlier in this game, when BBD missed on that land draw for multiple turns and getting Jace the Mind Sculptor in play, it's just been academic pretty much since then. Bob's just been having to figure out, how do I lose from here? How do I lose from here? And you've just been seeing the clinic go on. He's just been able to, turn on all cylinders here, play his lands, get his Liliana upticks, doesn't even care about his Dark Confidant playing because he's got a backup. He's got Bobs for days here. Bob has Bobs for days.
You gotta be happy to play a card with your namesake on it, right?
There's a good draw for BBD as well. Actual Factual Counterspell when you're facing down a Liliana.
Yes, Counterspell.
So
very powerful.
I've never played this matchup, and I'm very, very happy that I have it, because I would be on the Grixis control side well before I would be on the 4-color Loam side. And I gotta say this, I've been really impressed with this 4-color Loam deck.
Yeah, it's been looking absolutely fantastic here. And
if you can win with
it. If I can win with it, that is true. I've never done anything in my life.
If it makes Rudy Brixa look good, it's got to be great in the hands of some real legacy players, right?
Are there legacy players in this tournament? I haven't seen a single one yet.
Well, BBD hasn't been playing a lot of legacy this round.
No, Brian looks like he's playing modern.
Yeah, you got to feel for him a little bit. He's been trying his hardest, playing as well as he possibly can, but again, the draws have not lined up well. Bob has kind of just been having his way with BBD in this match and doing whatever he wants. This Liliana's already up at 8, but I don't think you're going to see this Liliana ultimate anytime soon.
Yeah, that's fair. This game is obviously inching closer and closer. This Liliana is getting closer and closer to becoming just a sacrifice your land strip mine for a ton of turns. But Tannen, I do appreciate you being here with me. I know you've won 2 separate team opens playing Legacy for your team, and yeah. I just got to go ahead and give you credit for that. It is impressive that you've won two Legacy opens. I've only won one. You're just. I'm glad you're here, bud. I don't know what I would do without your Legacy prowess.
Let's get back to the match. This is actually a pretty interesting turn from BBD here. So this Brainstorm was actually pretty good. This allowed him to put his 4th land into play, which is a Bloodstained Mire. He's got a Jace the Mind Sculptor hiding on top of his deck that Bob can't get to right now, and he's going to be able to fetch away the 3rd card, which is a card that BB doesn't want. So as long as he has another land in his deck, which I don't think he's out of them just yet. I don't think he's run out of lands. He hasn't been wastelanded that many times. He's going to get to land a Jace here, but here's the problem. He's going to play a Jace, and he's probably going to have to uptick it.
I don't think we're going to get to Jace here. This ultimate is going to go ahead and just Stone Rain BBD twice. And
I think this is a really heads-up play from Bob here. He knows that one of the only ways that BBD can get back in this game is to play a Jace the Mind Sculptor. And so he's going to use the -8 ability on Liliana here. He doesn't even care which pile BBD chooses, by the way. He's just whatever. I'm just literally using it as Stone Rain. Just kill lands, keep you off of Jace the Mind Sculptor, and it's the only way I can lose from here. So that's a really tight and good play from Bob there. Oh, when Punishing Fire start going upstairs, you're in a really bad spot. This is what I like to refer to as the slow burn. They each get in 1.
Yeah, what we see here, this is just going to be, as you said, it's definitely going to be a slow grind. Bob knows that this game is in the books. He's got to try and lock it up, though, before something crazy happens. Maybe Bob draws every land in his deck for the next 10 turns, and, BBD draws Surgical Extraction on Punishing Fire somehow, or Colgan's Command, to kill Chalice of the Void, and a Life from the Loam here. It's just getting closer and closer to Bob just finding everything he needs to end the game.
Yeah, we might actually see a concession from BBD here to Life from the Loam. It's targeting 3 separate wastelands. So here's the thing. Even if you were to surgical the Life from the Loam, the damage has already been done because the 3 wastelands get to go to Bob's hand. And ironically enough, that's the only amount of lands that BBD had. He only had 3 lands in play. And not many left in his deck that actually produced colored mana. So he was in a spot where even if Bob drew those 10 lands in a row, like you said, I don't think even BBD can come back from that.
No, absolutely not. And we already went through a swamp, so the only basic that BBD had left was Island. But that is going to do it. Bob is going to go ahead and move on to our winner's bracket. So he's going to be playing the winner of our next match, which is going to be Jarvis Yu versus Bryant Cook. That'll be pretty interesting to see that matchup. I know Jarvis has a very wide range. We've seen him play decks like Elves. We've seen him play decks like Lands. We've seen him play Grixis Control. We've seen him play Grixis Delver. We've seen him play, just this wide variety of interesting decks. And Bryant is kind of a one-trick pony, but I know Brian in his spare time likes to play decks like Rogue Delver and Miracles, so he's no stranger to the fair decks, but we know for sure that Brian is that kind of person that if you sit down and he plays Rite of Flame, you're not really that surprised.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I were to ever be paired against these 2 players in tournaments, if I'm sitting across from Brian, and I have been, it's always Storm. Just always Storm in paper events. Every single time I play Jarvis, or I see Jarvis playing Legacy, it's a different deck almost every time. And I got to say, Jarvis, like you said, probably has one of the biggest ranges out of everybody in this tournament. And I kind of appreciate that from players like that. You can appreciate both sides, right? You can appreciate the person who just is a stone master at their craft. Like they take their one deck or their 2 decks and they learn them and perfect them, and they're so good at it. Or the people that just have that, I'm good enough at all the decks kind of thing. And neither one of them is correct, but both of them are right. So it's actually pretty great to see these 2 guys go head to head and see who's going to come out ahead. Yeah,
it'll be really interesting there. But we did see 4-color Loam move on. 4-color Loam is one of those interesting decks because I think is one of the fair decks that actually has really good tools to beat a lot of the spell-based combo decks, cards like Chalice of the Void and Gadgetic. So if we do see Bryant playing Storm and Bryant does end up winning, Bob isn't just stone dead.
Right.
Which sometimes it might feel that way, is just, you're basically playing this matchup that you're just so unfavored in. So it'll be definitely very interesting here, and I'm really excited to see who's going to be playing. I'm not sure who we have on deck for commentary, but Tan and Grace, thank you for joining us over here on the Legacy Premier League doing commentary. We do hope that you'll join us again at some point.
Oh, you can pretty much book it. I'll be back at some point in time. I wish I could do more tonight, but real life is kind of beckoning me. I got a couple of things I got to take care of. So
that'll teach you to be married and enjoy your family life.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm an old man over here. I got chores and responsibilities.
Yeah, I could definitely relate to that. But we're going to take a quick commercial break. Just want to say thank you to our sponsors, MTG First, Card Hoarder, theepicstorm.com. Thank you very much for the support, and also the support of viewers like you. Even just tuning in is appreciative, and it helps us really get going. If you do want to support our producers, you can tip us, and all that money will go towards making the stream better, making computers better, making sure that the rest of this tournament, the rest of the league is going to be fantastic, and future leagues are also going to be great.